I'm serious. Never, ever, 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 ever lend money to family and friends. Never. Don't do it. Your girlfriend, don't do it. Your boyfriend, don't do it. Do not lend money to these people. Stop lending money to your family and stop lending money to your friends. I was looking at motivational quotes and I came across this quote. It said, quick to borrow is always slow to pay back. And I'm actually going to put this up on the screen right now so you guys can see it. Quick to borrow is always slow to pay back. Now, after seeing this, I ran across a second one, and this is actually from Dave Ramsey. A lot of you guys know Dave Ramsey. And here it says, lending money to family or friends can ruin the relationships. If they truly need help, just give it to them as a gift instead. Now, in this video, I'm going to talk about why you should never, never, ever, ever lend money to family or friends. And also on the flip side, why you should also never, ever borrow money from family and friends. Now, just in case you don't want to do this, just in case you want to lend money to family or friends or you want to borrow, then I'm also going to include something in this video that you can do. And by the way, guys, I've been in this position before. In both positions, I've actually lent money to family and friends. I've also borrowed money from family and friends. So I have a really good idea of how this is going to play out. And actually, before I get into why I think that lending money to family and friends is a really terrible idea, just a quick reminder, if you're new here and you're new to the channel, if you're seeing me for the first time, my name is Eann, and on this channel, I talk about ways to make money, ways to save money, ways to invest your money. I talk about bank accounts, credit cards, and just about everything to do with personal finance. So if you like these videos, if you like these types of topics, be sure to give this video a thumbs up. I'll really appreciate it. It's 100% free, won't cost you anything. Also, be sure to subscribe with all notifications on, and that way you'll never miss any of the updates of when I post new videos on this channel. Now, remember earlier on I said that I came across this quote, or Dave Ramsey's quote, where he says lending money to family or friends can ruin the relationships. If they truly need help, then give that money to them as a gift. And I totally believe in this, and this is 100% on the money. And I'll give you guys a story, right? So a couple years ago, I went, and this is gonna be a little story, so stay with me because this is all gonna make sense. I'm actually going somewhere with the story. But a couple years ago, I had a girlfriend, right? And she was gonna purchase a car. And the car that she was going to purchase was a dump. It was a piece of garbage. And at the time, she needed a car because she got this job and she was working at this job and it required her to drive late at nights. And so she needed something that was very reliable. So that was the main objective. So I offered to lend her $2,000. And by the way, guys, $2,000 is a lot of money, okay? And looking back, the only reason I offered to lend her this money, because it's a lot of money, is not because I didn't need the money, but I just didn't need the money at that point in time. So it's $2,000. It was a lot of money, and I did need that money, but I just didn't need that money at that point in time, and I could have done a few months without using that money. So I was like, hey, you know what? I'm gonna lend you this $2,000 and you can add this to whatever amount you have right now. And this way you can avoid that piece of garbage car and you can actually get something really good, really reliable. And that way you avoid any problems when you travel late at night. So I lent her this money and she got a car and she was working, and she actually told me before I even lent her the money that she was gonna pay me back, and she went into detail here, right? Like she told me, hey, you know what, I'm gonna pay you X amount of dollars every single week until I pay this off in like 4 or 5 months or something like that. I was like, okay, sure, no big deal, no problem. So I lent her the money. Now, after a while, I realized that she wasn't paying me back the money. But again, I didn't really need the money at that point in time. However, I noticed something that she would say from time to time. And it was that she would bring up the topic of owing the money without me saying anything about it. And she would just randomly say like, hey, you know what, I remember that I borrowed this $2,000 from you, but I'm not gonna start paying you back right now because you don't actually need the money right now. So it was kind of like a question, but a statement at the same time. And she would just throw this out all the time. She would be like, I don't really need to pay you back right now, Eann, because I don't think you really need this money right now. So I'll start paying you back later on in the future. So because of this, she postponed paying me or starting to repay me. And not because she wasn't able to repay me or not because she didn't have the money to repay me, but because in her mind, I never needed the $2,000, and so because in her mind I never needed the money back, then she just decided that she was going to postpone paying me back that money. Now, long story short, guys, not to bore you, that relationship deteriorated and I also never got that money back, but that wasn't the only lesson here. I also remember lending a friend some money. I lent a friend around $400 and they called me up and they told me some story about them not having enough money or not getting paid on time, and they needed around $400 to take care of some cost with their kids. And of course, me being a genuine person, I was like, okay, you know what? You need some help with taking care of something that's related to your kids. That's very important. I will lend you this $400. And they actually told me, they said, Eann, I'm gonna pay you this money back next week as soon as I get paid. And so I lent them the money, and then I realized that the next week they never paid me back, and they also didn't mention it, right? They never called me, they never texted me, none of that happened. Now I have the very same experience that I had with this girlfriend that I had with a friend, because I realized that they weren't paying me back this $400. And I also realized that the reason that they weren't paying me back this money wasn't because they were on hard times, they lost their job, they were in financial turmoil. They just didn't have the money to pay me back, but in their mind, they just thought that I didn't need the $400 back, and so they weren't going to pay me back. So that's two bad experiences with lending money. And after a while, I realized that family members or friends who would have never asked for money before, they'll ask you to lend them money. And it's as if while they're asking you to lend them that money, at that point in time, they've already, in their minds, made the decision that they're actually not gonna pay you back. So they have absolutely zero intentions of paying that money back, and they don't have any intention of paying the money back, not because, for example, they don't have a job or they can't pay it back, but usually it's because they think that you don't need the money, or in their minds, they may say, you know what, Eann is fine, he has a job, he's doing these things, Eann has money, so if I borrow $400 from him, I don't pay him back, then it's not gonna be a big deal, he's not starving, he's not gonna get kicked out of his house, and we're close friends, or we're close family, so he shouldn't bring this up, and he should just be fine with it, right? So I don't need to pay Eann back, as it's all good, especially if there's a close relationship, when it's like close family members or really close friends. Now, I realized that this was the mindset of these people, and then after giving this some thought, I realized that it's actually the mindset of a lot of people, and this is why I stopped getting upset about it. And if you're broke, and if you don't have any money, and your family and friends also know that you're broke, and you really don't have a lot of money, then they're never gonna ask you for money. They're not gonna wanna borrow anything from you. They're not gonna do it. They'd rather go and get a loan or put it on a credit card. But if you got a good job, if you buy a new car, if you buy a house, if you do something else, they may start hinting, they may say, hey, why don't you lend me $100 for this real quick, or $400 for this real quick, or $1,000 for this real quick. And again, they're doing it with the intention up front of actually never paying you back that money. Again, I realized that this was the mindset of people, especially when they're close to you, because they think that just because you're family or friends and the relationship is that close, they have a right somehow to not pay you back. And I'm saying a right because 99% of the time, they borrow the money, and from the get-go, they never have any intention of paying you back. Now, when this is with a complete stranger, it's easier, right? You can call them, you can cuss them out, or whatever. You can take them to court, you can sue them. But if it's a very close family member or close friend, you may also be thinking that, you know what, this is gonna damage this relationship. We've been friends for decades, or maybe since the first grade. And so you don't wanna let $100 or $200 or whatever amount of money it is come in between that friendship. And that's why it's gonna put you in a really tight spot. Now, another example here, right? I'm in Florida and people are going to Disney World. It's a big thing here. I'm not really a fan of roller coasters, but people like going to Disney, and Disney passes per person can be very pricey. They can go over $1,000 easily. So imagine having a friend, and this friend borrowed $600 from you, and you assume that they needed it for something important because $600 is a lot of money. But you go ahead and you lend them this money. Now, they promise to pay you back by a certain date, and let's say money is not an issue. Let's say you don't actually need that $600, and you're not even upset that they don't pay you back. But the thing is, once you find out that, you know what, you lent them $600 and they didn't actually need the money for something, I would say something that's a necessity, and they used the money for something that they could have easily gone without, like going on a mini vacation or buying Disney passes or just going on a trip, then you're gonna get really upset, because the mindset behind them paying you back is not because they can't afford to pay you back, but because they're choosing to not pay you back because they think that just because you're friends or because you're close family, then they have a right or an obligation, or you have an obligation to lend them money and not ask for it in return because you're close. So this is where damaging these relationships comes in. Now, in fact, I just gave you guys around 2 bad experiences. And I've had more, I'm sure I've had more, but I'm sure I'm not the only one, and I'm not upset about it anymore because, like the girl who never paid me back, that actually taught me a very valuable lesson. And I actually told that story to another girl that I was dating, and she actually didn't see an issue with it either. In fact, she said, "Eann, if I borrow money from you, why would I pay you back? I'm your girlfriend." So to her, my reasoning didn't make any sense. In fact, I said, well, hey, if I lent you money and you said that you were going to pay me back, then how does that translate to you not paying me back? And she also didn't see a problem with it. So I realized that that's how people think, and I'm not mad about it, right? Now I know, and now I know not to give anyone money unless I'm handing it to them and not expecting it back. Again, for instance, another example here. I wanted to go to Cancun or Punta Cana, and I was going to travel with this chick, and I called her up and I told her the dates, and she said it was okay, and she asked me what the trip cost, and I was like, well, why? I already got this. And she says, no, you know what? I'm gonna pay you 50%, send me your Cash App, Venmo, PayPal, Zelle. I'm gonna pay you back half. And I sent her the info, but again, you know, I know that this is how people think, so I'm not expecting anything back. And the next week rolled around and she called and there was no mention of the money. And I just brought it up because I wanted to know what she was gonna say. And she actually giggled and she told me that, Eann, I wasn't gonna pay you this money back. I had no intention of paying you back. She never intended to pay me back. And I laughed with her because I already knew this. So for argument's sake, she just wanted to make herself not look bad or something of the sort. And so she said that, hey, I'm gonna pay you this money back. But in reality, in her mind, she knew that she had no intentions of paying the money back. So this is what I realized. I realized that people are just like this. This is how they think. And imagine if this is your close sister or brother and $100 destroys that relationship. If you gave out money with no expectations up front, then if they don't pay you back, then you won't be as mad. You might not even care. And remember, if they do pay you back, then that's just going to be a plus, but you're not going to lose a good friend or a family member over money. Now, I have even more examples. A couple years ago, my dad told me that he had a friend, a close friend. That friendship was over 20 years and a 20-year bond, and that friendship ended because he lent this person some money to repair a truck, I think, which they used for work, which was important, but actually used the money for something else and they didn't pay him the money back. And he wasn't really upset about the fact that the person didn't pay him the money back because, again, it's not always about the money, especially when you're dealing with close family members and close friends. He was upset because the person had the ability to pay him back, but they chose not to pay him back, or their mentality or their mindset is that if you're close, then it's okay to borrow and not pay it back. And of course, they use the money for something that they could have gone without. Now, this causes a lot of domestic disputes between brothers, sisters, parents, cousins, close friends, and a lot of relationships are ending, and not just romantic relationships, but relationships on a whole, because people think that they can borrow things from you, borrow money from you, and just because you're close, they think that it's okay to not pay you back, and that shouldn't be a big deal in your eyes. Now, again, yes, you can sue them or you can take them to court, but usually most people don't because of how close the relationship is. Now, this is why I think Dave Ramsey is absolutely spot on when he says that if you truly believe that your friend or your family member needs help, then give them as a gift and don't expect it back, and that is a really good point. So that's the main reason behind not lending money. And I want you guys to comment down below, because I know that I'm definitely not the only one who's had these really bad experiences with lending money. And like I said, I just mentioned 2 or 3 experiences in these videos. I'm sure I have a lot more experiences with lending money, and I'm sure those experiences are all bad. And of course, you can have them sign a promissory note to pay the money back. But again, you may not want to do this because of how close the relationship is. So for me, I think it would be unwise for me to lend money to family or friends, knowing up front that there's probably a 99% chance that I will never see that money again. And if you truly believe that your family member or your friend needs money, they need financial assistance, then if you don't want to end up resenting them, then you should just gift them the money and not lend them, because you're going to resent them when you find out that they're not paying you back, and they're not paying you back because they can't afford to, but they're just choosing to not pay you back. So comment down below and let me know if you've ever lent money and how that worked out for you. Also, if you guys ever want to talk to me one-on-one, you can message me on Instagram. The link is down below in the description. And with that said, thank you guys so much for watching. All the best, and I'll see you very soon in the next one.